to Through the League Lens. My name is Elisa Campbell, and my guest today is Cindy Watson. And Cindy and I are both members of the advisory committee for the Mount Holyoke Range State Park, and have been for quite a while. I think Cindy's been to far more meetings than I have, but she represents Granby. There are two people from Granby. I represent Amherst. There could be two people from Amherst, but for the moment, I'm it. And we try to work with the parks and with the town concerns and stuff like that. And what we thought we'd talk about today is the park, but including the fact that the endless budget cuts the state park system has been enduring since at least as long as we've been on that committee.
Correct.
And what that ends up doing to a park, because it just isn't true that it can function all on its own. I collected a little bit of information as background. Massachusetts is the 7th smallest state, but we have the 9th largest state park system, which is quite amazing. In the past decade, environmental spending in general is down 7%. In 2010 and 2011 budgets, there was another 22% decrease from the 2009 spending for the parks. Studies in other states have shown that parks do indeed bring in visitors who spend more money in the state than the state park budget actually is, but that doesn't come back to the parks. And also that it costs more to reopen a park after it's been closed than money that was saved by closing it. So no one's actually officially closing the Mount Holyoke Range State Park or Skinner State Park, but in some respects they almost are, because there's almost no staff.
That's right. It's very difficult for the staff to handle what they have on their plate right now. And when I was growing up, I remember the caretaker at the Summit House, who was the son of one of our neighbors, and that was Charlie Drosdell. Some of you may remember him from the past. And my first encounter, well, maybe I shouldn't say encounter, but Charlie and his wife, Frances, were really nice people, and my mother took me up there for lunch one day. Well, another day, I decided that I was going to climb the mountain by myself. So I took a rock and a stick, and I went on my merry way, and I was 7 or 8.
From Granby?
No, I lived in Hadley at that time.
Okay,
I lived in Hockanum.
That would be even harder.
So the Summit House was my backyard.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went up to the mountain house on my own, and I went to the halfway house first, and Frances said, "Oh, where's your mother?" Well, she wasn't with me, so she sent me on up to Charlie. So I got a tour of the Summit House when I was about 8 years old, and it made quite an impact on me.
Yeah.
I've always been an outdoor person, hiking and biking and so on. And I've been on the committee for more than 20 years now, which is a long time. I can point to other people who have been on for a long period of time. Yes. However, when we get together and we discuss what is going on with the park and the park system, we've had some breakdowns in communication as of late. And I'm not going to place the blame on anybody. I think it's a full circle type situation where the state doesn't have the funding to have the personnel who need to do the things like clearing trails and maintenance. And then it's the volunteers who don't know what they're doing when they volunteer, or
they mean well.
They mean very well, but sometimes they're misguided. It's been a situation where we want more volunteers, and the state promotes that. However, the volunteers are not coming forth because there are so many things that they have to do before they can be a bona fide volunteer.
Yeah, it's difficult because of liability and things like that.
Yes.
But, yeah. I brought some pictures which will be edited into this after we talk, but the first one is one of the Summit House, which, as you probably know, is currently closed because it was discovered that various things were unsafe. The state had hoped to get it fixed this year in time for the foliage season, but when they went out for bid, the bids came in too high. So they now tell us that for sure they're going to have it fixed by next year, and we certainly hope that there aren't any more mishaps of that kind, because of course you can't guarantee anything with construction and bids and stuff like that. But I have a picture of the Summit House with the flag up above, and then a more close-up of the way they've blocked off the stairs going up. But then I also brought some pictures of just things that happen that, again, there's not the money and the staff to take care of. And one of them, in fact, is one of the trails that volunteers tried to fix. It's Taylor's Notch Trail, which probably many of you have been up. And basically, when people tried to do something to divert water off the trail, they ended up making waterfalls.
Yes.
So now it's like this gully with things, and I don't know how well that shows up in my picture, but that was my attempt to show that. And there's also this spring, a tree fell across the trail and is still there. So people are walking around it and making a new trail, which is not good. We need people to stay on the trail so that the plants can grow on the other parts of the wood.
That's right.
So I have a picture of that. And then I have some pictures over near the horse caves, which of course is a very heavily used section of what has been called the M&M Trail. And all the bare roots and rocks and stuff there. There's one that just shows the trail and the rocks. And then there's another one with the hiker coming down, stepping on one of the roots. There's holes behind it and stuff like that. And there just haven't been the people and the funds and whatever to do anything about those kinds of trails.
One of the other situations that we have on the trails and all over the park system is people who use it and have campouts, parties, whatever, but leave their trash behind.
Right.
And that has been a huge problem. It's not only a problem for us having to clean it up, it's also a problem for the animals who are apt to pick it up and get hurt.
Yeah, and also, like last fall, one of my favorite places to go, Rattlesnake Knob, here in the border between Amherst and Granby, I think it's right there on the border.
Right.
Somebody went up, dragged a bunch of rocks together, and had a fire.
Yes.
And that was at least one fire, and we saw some, I've got pictures of the site and shows some cans in the fire pit that they made. I mean, first of all, they're not supposed to do that. There's now a no fires sign up there. But also, it was very dry. They could easily have started a forest fire. And people do that, especially on the top of Bear Mountain, I think. People go up there and make little campfire things and don't think about what can happen. And we have had a couple of fires up there, one on Mount Hitchcock. I've lost track how many years ago. It must be at least 5.
Yes,
but you
at
can.
least.
That was pretty big in terms of spreading out through the undergrowth, and you can still tell if you're north of the mountain range, looking on a clear day, you can still see places where you can see under the trees where there isn't the usual amount of growth that was killed off by the fire. And then a couple of years ago, somebody was on Mount Norwottuck and started a little fire trying to burn some toilet paper. And that's not what you're supposed to do with your toilet paper. You're supposed to have a plastic baggie and carry it out. You're not supposed to start a fire.
Yes, so when you hike, please put some plastic bags in your pack.
And if you see some trash, you might be able to carry some of it out. I also have a picture. The mountain bikers, unfortunately, don't stick to where they're supposed to be. And I have a picture of a little obstacle that was put up on the trail, happens to be the Ken Cuddebeck Trail here in Amherst. That was certainly not authorized by anybody. It was just put up by people who thought it would make their mountain biking experience more fun. And also a couple of rather large rocks that got moved by somebody who must have been either very strong or had a crowbar or both.
Or a truck.
Well,
some of them get
that,
moved
or
by
some kind of ATV type thing that got up there. And again, people are not supposed to do that. It contributes to erosion and stuff like that.
Yes.
So we have problems of not enough funding and staff to really do the work that needs to be done, and not enough people kind of keeping an eye on what the visitors are doing, and visitors who are behaving inappropriately.
Right. I think too, we have a lack of communication among the divisions in the state, with the towns. Even though we have an advisory committee that we represent, we don't have that many people who have shown an interest, which is sad, because people move to the country because they like the area.
Right.
And then they don't know how to live within the area and be cognizant of the things that need to be done, how to preserve it. I think that it's often thought that somebody else will take care of it.
Yes.
Somebody else has to be us.
Has to be has to include the people who go out and enjoy it.
Right.
I mean, even just feet in boots wear down a trail if it's not maintained. And certainly the Holyoke Range is a very popular park, and lots of people go there, and the trails are pretty beaten down in most places because even just of people doing what they're supposed to do, which is walking.
Right. And we have a very old mountain.
Yes.
So it's eroding away slowly, but when you have ATVs and irresponsible people using it, it's apt to go faster. Yeah.
I know one of the areas we talk about a lot at our committee meetings is Lithia Springs.
Oh yes, I have something to say about that.
Okay.
Lithia Springs is a beautiful place. In fact, I have some pictures I'd like to show somebody at some time, but it was owned by the town of South Hadley and in Fire District Number 2. It has been turned over to the state, or sold to the state, and there again is not the personnel to watch over it, because it is a beautiful spot. You see the water, you want to swim when it's hot. Well, there's a building there. It's an old pump house, I believe.
It used to be part of the water supply.
It's part of the water supply. It was part of the water supply. And there's a dam that has a tree growing in it, which isn't good for the dam. Not that it would flood out the town if it went, but the problem there is that a lot of people go and use it for swimming and partying. And
right, if they were just swimming, it probably wouldn't be.
That's right. But the party part of it is bad, because they're throwing bottles and cans into the reservoir itself. They're careless with fires. They set up rope swings or ropes to swing out into the water for swimming, and
climb on the building.
They get on the roof of the building to swing off. So it's something that needs more supervision.
Right.
You can't put up a gate and expect that people are going to stop when they see the gate. They go around the gate. They go under the gate.
Yeah. Well, I think actually the area had been pretty well taken over by people in pickup trucks and Jeeps and stuff while it was still belonged to South Hadley.
Yes.
And the state has never really gotten a grip on it. And that's hard when people are used to going there. They're not going to suddenly stop, unfortunately. But someone could easily get very hurt or drown or both.
Well, that's another situation too, is liability. I think that sometimes we get carried away with things being, we're liable for this, we're liable for that. Too many rules and regulations, people abuse them, laws aren't enforced. And it also has put some of the people who did volunteer in a situation where they're not allowed to volunteer.
Yeah, we had some volunteers who actually knew that area very well and had their own ATVs and would kind of go out and try to talk to people and stuff. But that isn't being allowed anymore, and I understand why it isn't being allowed, but it has actually made it worse for the park, because they were actually having an impact on the inappropriate uses of those things, and now they can't do that. The state has proposed to consider the Mount Holyoke Range State Park as a reserve, which means no ATVs where they weren't already officially allowed, and they weren't officially allowed there. So as I say, I understand the reasoning why they've been told they can't go out and kind of supervise from the vehicles anymore, but they were actually helping.
And they were cleaning up some
And
of
they
the
were cleaning
trash.
things up, and they would cut trees that have fallen across the track.
Right.
So they're not able to do that anymore, and we don't have someone else who can take over. The Appalachian Mountain Club officially takes care of the M&M Trail, now called the New England National Scenic Trail, but apparently they had delegated the part on the Mount Holyoke Range to the Friends of Holyoke Range.
Yes.
And they, maybe at the time that that agreement was reached, maybe they had trail maintenance people, but now they don't seem to. And the only people I've seen doing any trail maintenance, at least in the Amherst Granby side of the park, it's been employees from EMS who occasionally are given a day off from the store to go do something on the trails, and some women from Women Outdoors.
And
But I've never seen anybody from the AMC, and you know,
and some individuals who go hiking.
and a few individuals who can do small things.
Right.
Yeah. But then there's other individuals. Somebody built a new trail, I'm sure unauthorized, in Amherst, connecting two trails. You know, I'm walking down a trail I don't use real often, and I thought, wait a minute, there never used to be a trail here. So we followed it, and it goes over to Mechanic Street. And so I can only assume that someone who lives near there wanted to have their own shortcut.
Right. And this happened with the bike trails too.
Yeah.
And some of them are quite nice, but
But-
they were built by the bikers and
Right.
without any authorization, and it makes it difficult for the Park Service people.
Right. And I know some of the bicycle trails over on the Bachelor Brook area of Granby go very close to vernal pools, which is
Yes.
not allowed. And if they had been doing an official trail, they would have known that, and they wouldn't have put the trail there. But it, you know, the kind of, oh, let's put a trail here, that's pretty, or that would be nice, or.
Without knowing what a vernal pool was.
Right, probably not, yeah. So it is definitely a problem. Unfortunately, with the state budget the way it is, things are getting worse, not better. Maybe in another year or so it might start turning around a little. But I know that during the, well, you've been on the committee at least 20 years. I think I've been on sort of for about that length of time.
Yes.
Basically, things have gone downhill the whole time.
They
Every
have.
now and then we'd think we saw a little uptick, but that never lasted. And the basic budget and staffing of the park is certainly smaller than it used to be. They do generally collect, at least on the weekends, for people driving to the top of Mount Holyoke, going up to enjoy the Skinner State Park, which is on the top of the mountain. But that means that there's a person who spends usually his or her time just sitting there at the bottom of the mountain.
Right.
So, and that money goes to the state general fund, not to the park
Which
itself.
is, yes, that's
So that's a problem.
difficult.
That's a problem too. The park system has attempted to get the legislature to let them keep more of the money that the parks bring in, but the legislature has not been willing so far
No.
to give up that power. They like to be in the position to allocate where the money goes. So.
That's correct. There's one thing I would like to tell all of you out there is that Mount Holyoke, where the Summit House is located, in the Joseph Allen Skinner State Park.
Right, it's Mount Holyoke.
It's Mount Holyoke, it is not Skinner Mountain.
Yes, yes. There is no Skinner Mountain.
There is no Skinner Mountain.
Mr. Skinner owned a lot of silk mills, and he bought the land at the top of the mountain and had the hotel for a while, and that's why Skinner State Park. But
There's a rich history there too.
yes, yes.
And I would encourage you to find out about it. Also, if you're a golfer, Mr. Skinner built a golf course in South Hadley for his daughter.
Right.
And
People still play there.
And people still play there. But memorabilia from the hotel that used to be there is quite collectible.
Yes. Well, there's a little museum in South Hadley that
Yes.
relates to the Skinners that has some of that.
Yes, it does.
And people have done their best with period furniture and things in the Summit House. So when it's finally open again, we hope in another year or so, if you haven't been up there to see it, it's interesting. But of course, most of what people go up there for is the view, which is fantastic. And people have had at least a couple of interesting shows of photographs up there at times. The quote Summit on the Range people had a photo contest, I don't know, 6 or so years ago, that filled up the place with interesting photos. And then during Hadley's 350th anniversary, they had a wonderful collection of photographs of Hadley.
Of them, yes.
And I know I talked to some people up there who live in Hadley, have lived in Hadley all their lives, and said they'd never been up there before. Because
that's true.
Yeah.
People come from all around the world and visit, but some locals haven't even been there.
Well, I think some of them said, you know, during the summer they were busy farming, so they didn't really have a whole lot of time.
They were taking care of the land down below.
Drive to the top of the mountain and look at the view, but they were all glad they were up there. So we do look forward to getting the house fixed up again so that at least the porch, we hope, in another year or so will be available for people who go up there. I mean, there's some nice views from the picnic area, but
well, the sad part about that too is that first it was found that there were some underpinnings under the deck, the porch, that needed to be replaced, repaired, whatever. That led to finding some other things. So when they were going to work on one particular item, it suddenly grew to many items. And the budget came in, I believe it was over 300.
That's what I heard.
The estimate was over $300,000 more than what we had
available.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just get handed over automatically.
No. In fact, they're lucky they think they can find it. I mean, we're lucky they think they can find it whatsoever in the current situation. The previous superintendent, Mike Smith, used to paint like one side of the building every year.
Yes. And
he did his best to replace floorboards and kind of basic carpentry kinds of stuff. But turns out there was more to do, more serious work that needed. And some of you may remember that at various times the visitor center on Route 116 has been closed. I know I can remember it was closed for a while because the water supply was inadequate and they had to drill a new well because there just wasn't enough water pressure.
And a deep well.
Yeah, they had to get a deep one. Whether the quarry has anything to do with that, we never figured out. But anyway, so it was closed for a while because of no water. And then they found out that the electronic fire monitoring thing wasn't working. And so it was closed for quite a while in order to fix that and get it properly inspected.
It's now fixed.
And it's now fixed, and it is open to the extent that they have staff. I mean, they can open the door to use the restrooms and stuff, but the actual visitor center part, of course, can only be open when there's staff. And there are some staff that have to share between those, and many of them also, that, like the superintendent now, has responsibilities for many other parks, including Mount Tom, which wouldn't be far away if he were a crow. But given that he has to drive on the roads, of course, it's up to the Coolidge Bridge and across and down and stuff like that. So in order to try to cope with decreasing funds and staff for the parks, what they've done is each superintendent has more responsibilities. And since he doesn't really have much in the way of staff at the park, and he was already cleaning the restrooms and all that kind of stuff, I really can't figure out how he can do that. I mean, it's just, I don't.
No, none of us can really.
Yeah.
So you out there need to try to get involved somehow, or make yourselves aware of the things that are happening. And if you want to keep your parks and reserves and so on, you need to speak out. You need to first come and see them, find out what needs to be done, and if there's something that you can do to help.
Right.
Please do.
Including contacting your friendly local state rep and senator.
That's correct.
To say that these things matter to you. Not that all the other things that have been cut don't matter to you, but that these things do too. And it's a very important part of the quality of life around here. We all count on these places being there and available and fun to go to. Beautiful.
The Pioneer Valley, yes. We need to preserve what we have. We have a gift, and we'll lose that gift if we don't take care of it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at the point where I think maybe the best thing to do at Lithia Springs would be to take the dam out, and then nobody would be swimming there. That would be a very controversial idea.
Yes,
But-
yes. We don't want the Lithia Springs as a reservoir, we want a swamp.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be popular, it is beautiful and stuff, but it is also a major attractive nuisance and problem for the park. And then, of course, there's other places where people just go and dump stuff because it's at the end of a dirt road where people don't see them.
Right.
So, and I know there's a place in Granby where that's been happening
Yes.
that you've been aware of.
Yes, this was an area that at one time was part of Westover, and Westover sold it to the town, and it's Granby Sand Plain,
Okay,
and people go out there, and it's a very nice spot,
mhm,
but there are so many restrictions now on trash and dumping and towns having a place to put it. A lot of people who can't afford the fee or don't want to pay the fee find it in other places.
Right.
Go to another community and dump their trash.
Uh-huh.
And we can't have that.
Right, right. Well, and I know the chair of our committee, Merle Bookhout, who lives right on the dirt road at the bottom of Mount Holyoke there, she's constantly picking up stuff along the road. I know you pick up stuff along 116.
Yes, I did this for how many years? I can't remember. But it was part of the Adopt a Highway program where you would clean 2.2 miles. Well,
That's a lot.
it is a lot because that's only one side. So you're doing 4.4 miles.
Yes.
And I ended up doing it mainly by myself.
Right, it's not like it's, this company adopted it.
That's right.
Cindy Watson
That's
adopted
right. I
it.
tried to get people to volunteer and it wore them out. So, well, I have stopped doing that.
Mhm,
However, there hasn't been anyone to pick up the slack.
right.
And we need somebody, because when I drive it now or walk it, I say, oh, if I was out here. But one of the other things that you want to try to keep in mind is that we would like you to attend our meetings if possible, so that you know more about what's going on. And the Mount Holyoke Range Advisory Committee meets on the third Thursday of the month. We do not meet every month. We have July and August off. We go back in September. We have met at the Notch Visitor Center.
When it's open, that's
When
where
it's
we meet.
open. So you'll have to watch for the announcements as to where we will be meeting.
Right, right.
But the meetings start at 7 o'clock, and please come.
Yep, second Thursday in September will be our
And-
next meeting.
Yes, and if you're interested in being part of it for your town, please contact your town selectman.
Yes, I know that Amherst is getting this committee on its list of committees to appoint people to, so if you are interested in being a representative from Amherst, there will soon be a way for you to formally apply to do that. And
You have a good representative right here.
well, but I don't have to be the only one or
No,
forever.
she
or
would
forever.
like someone
Yes.
else to help her
Yes.
out.
Granby and Hadley currently both have 2 people, but Belchertown, we haven't seen anybody in ages, but, or, let me think, South Hadley has 1, I think.
South
at this
Hadley has
point.
1 at the moment.
Yeah.
We're hopeful for a second, but that
Yeah.
hasn't happened
Hasn't
yet.
happened yet. But in any event, we do our best to try to help the park, and we hope that you will join us in that effort in whatever way you can. If you see something along the trail that shouldn't be there, pick it up. And if you can find other ways of contributing, we hope you'll do that. Thanks, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.